Welcome everyone, and welcome to our platform trial webinar this week. As you know, we have a monthly webinar where we invite groups that are supporting the trial, and I'm just so pleased today to welcome Jen DiMartino, who leads the ALS1 group, and she'll say a few words about her organization. Next slide. As you know, we are really bringing together the entire community to launch the first platform trial for ALS. And today, again, I'm joined by Jen DiMartino from ALS1 and Dr. Mary Cudkowicz, who leads the trial. Mary, would you want to get this started? And then Jen will tell us about ALS1.
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's good to virtually see everybody. Things are going really well with the platform trial, despite the raging pandemic. So we appreciate everybody who's participating and everyone who's interested. Looking forward to giving you an update. One of our amazing partners is ALS1, and they are supporting the HEALEY platform trial. They're also supporting amazing other research and care initiatives. So they're a really great partner. So looking forward for all of you to meet Jen and hear more about ALS1.
Ready?
Yes,
Well,
Jen.
thank you so much, Sabrina and Merritt. Honestly, it is such a huge honor to be asked to speak today on behalf of ALS1. Just for those of you who may not be aware, ALS1 is an organization solely focused on funding the advancements of ALS research and providing care resource and equipment to those who are living with the disease. And we really try to do it in a unified approach. So we are proud, very proud to be partnered with the HEALEY Center, and we're so thrilled that a large portion of what we raise is for them is directed to the platform trial. It's just, it's an incredible feeling, and this groundbreaking and innovatively designed trial has been such a huge beacon of hope for families affected by ALS, knowing that critical time, something that there's just, you know, so little of, is being spent testing multiple potential therapy candidates at one time. And hopefully by doing so, hopefully it'll provide more time in the future for their loved ones. So it's a pretty incredible feeling. In addition, the expanded access program that is hopefully slated to be available to those who may not qualify for the trial right now is a very big bright light. And, you know, of course, for our donors and our supporters, whether they are giving it or sponsoring an event like our upcoming Snowball Gala, I think it provides something really powerful and tangible for them to champion and to rally behind, and it just brings a lot of meaning to each dollar donated. So so we're just thrilled to be able to help to advance it. And then what also makes me smile is seeing the supporter slide that you just had up there, and it shows how many organizations are supporting this this great trial design. And I think that whether an organization is small or large, and whether the donations and support is small and large, it all adds up, and it really aids in advancing this, and that's what we need. So hopefully more and more come on, and we can really get this rolling and see some great results from it. So on behalf of all of us from ALS1 and all of our families and supporters, and really on behalf of everyone, thank you so much for inviting me today and for all that you guys do. It's incredible.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for being here with us today. So Sabrina, do you want to walk through some of the updates?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we have a short slide deck. As always, we really want to leave time for questions. Today's webinar was rescheduled from a Thursday to a Monday because of Thanksgiving. And then on Thursday, we will continue to have our weekly webinars. So for today, because we have a little bit more time, we are going to provide a little bit more in-depth updates, but again, leaving time for your questions. And specifically, as you know, we have a patient navigator, two patient navigators, Catherine and Alison, who join our weekly meetings, and they've been receiving a few questions about COVID and the impact of COVID, so we thought we would provide an update because that's a frequently asked question. Next slide. As you know, and as Jen alluded to, really, we are here only for one reason, really, to accelerate the development of new treatments. And rather than testing one treatment at a time, with the platform approach, we can test multiple treatments at the same time. So we started with 3 drugs over the summer. We're now adding number 4, and we will continue to add treatments as they become available so that we can make progress faster. Next slide. And so these are the treatments that we are testing at this time. Specifically, we launched the trial over the summer with treatments A, B, and C. We call them regimens. So regimens A, B, and C, testing zilucoplan, verdiperstat, and CNM-Au8, which are 3 different investigational products that have different mechanism of actions, but all based in science. They were selected by a very expert committee of ALS scientists that thought that these were promising drugs to be tested in people. And now we're about to add the 4th drug, regimen D, which is pridopidine, and we're about to launch that any day now. And so as you can see here, we are color coding the drugs. We will continue to color code them, and each regimen will have a color associated with that, but every regimen also has a small placebo group that can then be shared across different regimens. And that's one of the real powerful features of the trial, that we can assign people mostly to active and only have a small placebo specifically for every 4 people who enter the trial. 3 will go on active drug, any of the drugs that are available at that time, and only 1 will go on placebo. And then the placebo data can be shared across different regimens so that we can still make a meaningful comparison, a scientific, statistical comparison between each drug and the shared placebo, as the graphic illustrates. Now, the placebo-controlled trial lasts about 6 months or 24 weeks to be precise. And then at the end of that, people who complete the 6 months of randomized control study, they can be eligible to enter what we call an open label extension. And that's an important feature of this trial, which means that at the end of the test, or the study, each individual at the end of their 6-month participation, they have the option to receive active drug long-term for several months. It's not mandatory, it's just an option, but we really felt it was important to offer that to our participants. You can see in the title of the slide that this is a perpetual adaptive trial. So what this means is that we're not stopping at these 4 drugs, but we will continue to adapt and to add more treatments, as they become available. Next slide. And again, as I just said, we continue to monitor the state of the science. We continue to accept submissions on a rolling basis. We have an expert committee of scientists, as I said, that continues to monitor the field. The first drugs were selected based on a competitive process where up to almost 30 companies submitted nominations. And so the first 5 were selected. We opened with 3 regimens over the summer. As I said earlier, we're about to add the 4th pridopidine any day now, and we're already in discussions with 3 additional companies for 2021. And if you want to have more information about the drugs, that's you can refer that to the website, but also obviously ask questions today. Next slide. So I want to spend a couple of minutes about the target population for the platform trial, and also the information is available on our website. It's publicly available, and so I just want to share a few key features of the trial. In terms of key inclusion criteria, obviously somebody needs to be diagnosed with ALS. we do have a couple of cutoffs related to disease characteristics, such as time since onset of weakness should be less than 3 years, slow vital capacity should be at least 50% of predicted, and participants need to be able to swallow. Also, we allow participants to take riluzole L or edaravone as long as they are on a stable dose. For every regimen, we include 160 participants. And again, because of the randomization ratio, which is in favor of active, most of those participants will be on active drug, 120, and only 40 on placebo, as I explained earlier. And the placebo control period will be 24 weeks or 6 months, followed by an open label extension. Next slide. The endpoints of the trial are also publicly available, and so you can look them up on our website, and we'll post all of this information, also the slides. Essentially, what we are testing here is whether each drug is able to change the course of the disease in terms of function and survival. And these are clinically meaningful endpoints. And as discussed with the FDA, should the drug have a very persuasively positive result on this trial, this trial could serve to support a new drug application. Essentially, positive results could lead to a new drug for ALS that goes to market for ALS, assuming all the results are positive. So this is incredibly exciting. This is a late-stage trial, meaning that there's a lot of science behind each of the drugs, and then we're measuring clinically meaningful endpoints listed here. Next slide. I do also want to mention that in addition to clinical endpoints that are important for registration of new drugs, we're also leveraging the trial as an opportunity to learn more about ALS. And for that reason, we're collecting a number of biomarkers, which are very important. As you know, there's a lot of interest in biomarkers in ALS, and these can be collected by collecting biosamples like DNA or panel fluid samples in the clinic. That's why it's important for participants to come to clinic and so that we can learn more about these biomarkers. But we also have digital biomarkers, including smartphone apps to measure speech and respiratory function at home. And we are very excited about this because obviously that could really change the way we do trials in the future. And we're using the trial really as an opportunity to learn more about the behavior of these measures, which are so important. Next slide. So this is the list of sites that are enrolling as of today. We have 31 sites. Every week we add a few sites. They're listed here. They're also available on our website if you have questions. Next slide. In addition to the list of sites, we also have the contact information of every participating site on the website with an email link so that you can actually contact the coordinator at that site. We selected more sites than these, and we are working actively on activating all of them. And also we're gonna issue a new call for additional sites so that we can be better, offer better coverage in different geographies or in areas where there's a lot of demand from patients. And so we're going to add even more sites in the near future. Next slide. And I know that there's a lot of interest in the trial and many people have many questions, and that's why we're doing these weekly webinars. I also do want to mention that we have two wonderful people who joined us as Patient Navigation team, Catherine and Allison. They're available at their phone number as well as the email. If you have any general questions about the trial, please email them and they'll get back to you by phone or email so that really you can have all your questions answered. And we know that also sites are obviously actively enrolling participants, so feel free to also contact Catherine or Alison as your first point of contact. Next slide. And this is another way to receive platform trial updates. That's a link there on our website. We do send information about this trial as well as other research opportunities through something that we call the ALS link. It's a free newsletter that you can subscribe to. Next slide. And these are our enrollment updates as of today. Over 200 people signed informed consent, which is fantastic. 162 were assigned to a regimen. At this point, we are enrolling in 3 regimens, and again, the 4th will be added soon. And 131 people are currently receiving study drug, active or placebo. And this is an extraordinary rate of enrollment. if we can move to the next. Okay. And here, I just wanted to provide some perspectives about COVID, because people have been asking many questions and have been calling our patient navigators. And so they mentioned that it would be nice to share essentially the impact of COVID on all of this. Again, we are having a fantastic rate of enrollment despite COVID, which is remarkable. We just wanted to share some of the work that we are doing, or we have been doing since the spring to address COVID. So as you know, in the spring, there was a lot of disruption to normal workflow at many sites, with limited to no ability to start new studies. It was actually prohibited to start at many sites. And the restrictions and the concerns were, on multiple levels, in terms of staff redeployment, or restriction to the workplace, and some procedures were restricted. So for example, you may be familiar with a procedure called vital capacity, where we assess respiratory function in clinic. That's part of normal ALS care, but we couldn't do it in the spring at most sites. And obviously there was regional variability, and that's why some sites experienced different barriers at different times, and so that's why some sites opened before others. And that's true, that happened, again in the spring. It has continued with different waves and different geographic impact depending on the spread of the pandemic. Next slide. So what we did, throughout all of this was to certainly remain committed to the trial. So we were able to start the trial despite the pandemic. We worked remotely in the spring. We made several protocol amendments to make the trial COVID resilient. A few examples: we can now test respiratory function at home using home spirometry. We can do telemedicine for some visits, as well as home labs for some visits. And because of all this work, we were able to start enrollment in July. And as I said earlier, enrollment has been exceeding expectations at the sites that were able to open. So huge thanks to all the sites and to all the patients who have been great partners in all of this, and really were able to really work with us as we were making all these changes, and really opened as quickly as possible. Next slide. And right now, we're still obviously experiencing a second surge at some sites, with some staff redeployment and some institutions limiting research activities again, not to the extent that we are stopping the trial at all. We're continuing, and we continue to make progress, but we just wanted to share that there is obviously a second surge that's impacting research. We also had a few unexpected challenges, such as some supply chain problems that are thought to be caused by COVID indirectly, meaning that some test tubes, some research kits are now in high demand, because obviously there's a lot of COVID trials and kind of shifting priorities at the different vendors. And so we are overcoming that. We are working with all our sites and our vendors to be able to continue the trial. And so far, again, obviously we've been continuing, actually exceeding expectations in terms of enrollment, but that's something that we're working on. Now, cyber attacks, I'm certainly not an IT expert, but what IT experts have been telling us is that in this time of COVID and remote working environments, there's been more cyber attacks in general, and actually one of our vendors had that at some point. That was resolved, but again, all sorts that you don't think to associate with COVID can happen actually, and so we're working hard on all of that, as well as some home nursing shortages. Some of you may be familiar with that also on the clinical side. Obviously there's been some shortages of nurses, because some of them have been redeployed or maybe quarantined from time to time, and so because of that, we'll have some challenges with the ability to do some of the home assessments, like home labs that we were planning, but we are working on all plans to be able to continue the monitoring and this, to preserve the safety of everyone involved. So we are continuing, but again, we just wanted to share that the challenges continue and change over time and affect different geographies and different topics. Next slide. So again, we will continue to update you. We're gonna also have a webinar on Thursday. These weekly webinars are really an idea that came from our patient advisory committee. And we're happy to talk with you every week and answer any questions that you might have. And that's the link to find the schedule, registration links, as well as the videos of previous webinars. And you can also download the slides if you want to use them for your information. We're working on new webinars about each drug's mechanism of action and science. They have to be approved by the central IRB because the trial is active, and so that's part of the regular process of research. We need to have IRB review all the materials like the ones that we're sharing today. And so as soon as they are approved, we will launch those webinars for those of you who may have questions about the science, specifically about the drugs that we're testing. So that was the last slide, and I know today it's a 60-minute webinar, so we still have time for questions, and I'll stop there and let Merit take it from
please.
there.
Thank you, Sabrina and Jen. If people could please write any questions they have in the Q&A. There is one here, and it's a really good question. We always talk about finding treatments. What about finding a cure? I'm happy to try to answer that. I was thinking, because I got to see it ahead of time, I was thinking about it. I think there's lots of types of treatments, and curative treatment is one type of treatment, but there are also, symptomatic treatments. There are restorative treatments. There are preventative treatments. So I think treatment is the broader word, and I could be making this up, but this is just how I was thinking about the word treatment. And of course, our goal is to cure ALS. I mean, we want to, but we don't know until the trial's over, the impact of that particular type of treatment. But that is the goal. Okay, question: Are any of the trial's current or planned drugs intending to stop the progression of symptoms instead of just slowing the progression of symptoms? And if so, which drugs? Sabrina, do you want to?
Yeah. So I will say again, as you said, Merit, obviously when we started the trial, we hope that the drugs will actually stop the disease, but we don't know until the trial is over. So the science obviously tells us that the targets that we are testing are good targets, and that we don't really know the extent of the effect until we test it in people. Now, I would say that as kind of an analogy, we know that ALS is a complex disease. There are many things that happen in ALS. People might have different genetic diseases or different causes of ALS, and no two patients are alike. And that's true also for other complex diseases. Think about cancer, heart disease, HIV. And for all those diseases that are complex, it's been combination treatment that provided the most success. So I think that that's where we are looking now at ALS, where we may have to have more than one treatment in combination that slow down the disease until ultimately we can stop it. So I think, any dent that we can make is definitely progress in the right direction. So hopefully we'll find something that can be, transformative.
Yeah, thank you. There's a question not about the platform trial, but whether we can spend a few minutes on the status of NurOwn for those with ALS scores over 35, as well as AMX 035. So maybe I'll talk about NurOwn a little bit, and Sabrina, you can talk about AMX 035. I'll say that we don't really know the status yet of NurOwn, and we'll be smarter in a couple weeks after conversations happen with. At a conference, so we're presenting it next week to our colleagues, our international colleagues at the International MND, and that should be available for everybody, that talk. And then we're having a couple of think tanks with leaders to vet it some more, and then obviously the company will go to the FDA. And I'd say I don't really know whether it'll get approved or not. Overall, the results were not positive, as everybody knows. It was a pre-specified analysis looking at people above or below the score of ALSFRS 35 at entry, and that was picked based on modeling before that would be the median. It ended up not being the median. The median was actually lower than that, but the pre-specified was looking 35 or less. And there was a trend that there was a response, more responders in the treated group above 35 than in the placebo group above 35. And then we didn't see that in the people below 35. So, I feel strongly, I think, as Sabrina and Jen and others, that you don't leave any stone unturned in ALS. If there's a signal that something might work in a certain population, you got to go after it. But they're small numbers, and so it's going to be a bit of a battle. But the company is doing lots of analyses and getting lots of opinions, and we're all going to do our best to try to understand it and try to move forward fast. So So I hope everybody will come next week. I forgot exactly which day it is, maybe December 9th. At the
Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah, International MND meeting. It'll be presented there. And actually, Sabrina's also presenting there on the AMX 035 data. And then I think there'll be also some other webinars for patients following that. So there'll be a lot more information coming out the next week. Sabrina, do you want to talk about AMX 035?
Yes, absolutely. So we finished the trial a little earlier than Neuron a few months ago. So we have done a lot of work over the last few months to understand the results of the trial, and I'm just so excited to share again, as you know from previous webinars, that the trial was positive. So it did have positive results on clinically meaningful endpoints such as function, measured by the ALS-FRSR, which you're probably familiar with, as well as long-term survival. So I think that's remarkable effects. You know, what's going to happen in terms of the regulatory discussions and next steps, it remains to be seen, because there are many pieces to these, and lots of, obviously, lots of people working on this at this time. So I think it's going to be important to keep in touch. And we will present also next week at the International MND Symposium. We'll get great feedback, I'm sure, from our international colleagues and the entire international ALS community, and we will continue the discussions with the FDA and other, you know, kind of international counterparts all around the world. So I think the next few weeks will be interesting, and depending on that, we'll see what the next steps are.
Good news. I hope, I actually don't know off the top of my head if the International MND meeting is open registration. And I know a lot of patients came when we were in person, and I hope it's even easier to come virtually.
Yeah, you know, I would have to check on that. So I believe that there's a group of patients that come every year, and there is an application process. I don't know if the entire program is available online. I do know that they do a lot of short clips and sort of media and social media dissemination. So if you know, it's good to look for it on social media next week. There should be more information.
And then, are there any new trials targeting C9?
Yes, there are actually. There's a lot of trials that are, you know, being planned for that. So, as you may know, there's one trial led by Biogen that developed an antisense oligonucleotide that's currently being tested for targeting C9 disease specifically, and there's other companies that are working on setting up new trials for early 2021. So I believe those, if they've not been announced yet, they'll be announced soon, and the target kind of timelines are, you know, early 2021 for some of these new trials. So I think it's definitely a field that's exploding, and that's good news for people with C9 ALS.
Yeah, there's lots of excitement there. So there was a follow-up that someone wrote in that there's a $45 registration fee for the International MND meeting. Yeah, so that's good. Thank you. Question is, has there been any progress to provide expanded access in parallel to the platform trial at some sites? And I can answer that. Yes, we've definitely had progress. So thanks for asking that. So we're working with 2 of the 4 companies now on the protocols. We're hoping that one of those will be available in early 2021, and the other one probably more like March or April. And that has to do a lot with the drug supplies of the companies. But we've been raising funds to support this, and thank many of you and ALS One too for help with that. So I think we'll see more of that. I think going forward, what we're going to try to do with the new companies is build that in right at the beginning as part of the contracting and the plan. So I think eventually it'll get that. We always have it, and we keep growing it at more sites. Okay, let me see the next question. So this one too, I'd like to hear your thought. Someone who was, diagnosed last June and is at the UVA clinic, and they were told that you were eligible. So thank you for being interested in the HEALEY platform. Also another trial, Combat ALS, but the site said that that centrally we're delaying things at sites, and so you might not be able to do it till January. And I want to explain a little bit what that is. It is true, it's not really a delay, but we've asked all the new sites that are coming on to, after their first 2 participants go through the screening and the randomization, to send the records to our monitoring group to monitor for compliance. And the reason we've done this is because the trial is a registration trial, meaning that if it's positive, it could go to FDA approval. We got to make sure the sites are doing everything absolutely correct. And it's a complex study. And a lot of companies do this too, where they just look and make sure the first 2 at a site is done correctly. So we just instituted this for the new sites, and including UVA. So it's not like we're delaying them. We just don't want them to enroll 10 people all at once. We want to look at their first 2, make sure they're doing it correctly, and then they can go and open and enroll as fast as they want. So we'll reach out to them to make sure that they understand that. I think they do, but maybe it was a miscommunication. They shouldn't push you off till January. And then the related question from the same person was about the COMBAT ALS trial, which is a brutal ask, and whether we have plans to look at that. And I'll say that no, we do not at this time. One is a company, if they're interested, they apply for us. Like we sometimes will reach out if we know a really hot drug and that we want to attract them to it as well. So Medicine Nova did not apply to be part of the platform trial. I have to say we have done some expanded access with the brutal ask in the past, and we're about to write that. We did present it last year. And we'll probably publish those results soon. So there's a question about someone's taking the Amylyx 035, and would that make them ineligible as a platform trial participant while taking those supplements or medicines? Sabrina?
Yes, so at this time, as you may have heard from previous webinars on this topic in this series, we cannot allow people who are taking investigational products, meaning unapproved treatments, to be part of the platform trial. And that's the case for essentially all ALS trials, that we only allow, not just for the platform trial, but for most trials, we only allow drugs that are FDA approved. So should AMX35 be FDA approved, then it will become standard of care like riluzole and edaravone, which are in fact allowed in the trial. But we don't allow investigational products because they could affect the results, and then we wouldn't be able to really tell, to really test the drugs that we are testing right now. But again, hopefully, if the drug gets approved, then it will become standard of care. At that point, it will be allowed.
Great, thank you. The question is there a target date for the expanded access program? Sabrina, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so we're working on the next steps for that. So while it's an expanded access program, it is still a trial in the regulatory sense of the word, meaning that we do need to have obviously oversight from both the FDA and the IRB, which is the ethics board that regulates research at every institution. So we are now working on those steps. So my hope is that in early 2021, we will be able to open some of these programs. We do have some, I think, Merit, you alluded to that, we do have some experience with some of these EAP programs at our institution, and now the goal is to expand on that and make these available at different institutions. So we're certainly working on that. And I hope that in early 2021, those will be open as well.
Great, thank you. There's a question of, have you seen any early results from any of the platform trial drugs? And I'll say, no, but we haven't looked. So it is a blinded study, and there are interim looks for safety, of course, and also something called futility, where if the drug has a chance of working, we would abort early. And that's really important. I personally think every trial should have that. They don't all have that, but we insisted on that. We don't have early looks for efficacy, and the reason is twofold. One is every time you do that, the FDA requires that you lower your statistical p-value at the final analysis. Because if you look at something, for example, 20 times, there's a chance by error that you're going to find a positive result once. So the more you look, the more likely that you could make a mistake like that. So the FDA for every trial, not just for ALS, gives a penalty kind of if you keep looking. And so it's not worth it in a study of 6 months long to take that hit at your power at the end to be able to tell if the drug works or not. The other reason is that we made the study short, 6 months, because I personally don't think we should be doing 12 months or 18-month studies. But that means, you know, we really need the 6 month data to be able to tell if the drug works. So we will not have any early results from the platform trial that on efficacy. We would have early results on safety. The other question is, how does Radicava compare to AMX035? Sabrina, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so our trial, the center trial, tested AMX35. And I do want to point out that the trial design is such that we cannot do a head-to-head comparison, because actually most people who were in the trial were already taking either Riluzole or Edaravone, Radicava, or both. So essentially what we are looking when we interpret the results of AMX35, we're looking at the effects of AMX35 on top of standard of care medications. So this is not a comparison to, but it's basically an additional value that the drug brings on top of usual care. You know, just, you know, like Radicava, you know, the drug AMX35 was not found to stop completely or reverse the disease in the trial. So from that point of view, you know, these drugs, you know, kind of going back to the discussion we had earlier, slow down the progression, but they do not completely stop or reverse the disease. But again, that's why I think, you know, combination treatment really is the answer for a complex disease like ALS, and even for other, you know, if you look at HIV or other, and you know, fields of medicine, really, the first drugs to be developed, you know, are rarely a complete cure. You need to kind of make progress and combine those drugs until you get to really, you know, more transformative effects. I hope that answers.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
The question is, I signed up for the platform trial last September. I spoke to a research access nurse, and it appears that I'm eligible for all the trials. Is there a time estimate for me to get enrolled? And so I would say that, I mean, depending on the site, you should be able to be enrolled, you know, very soon. If you want to let us know what site you're close to, we can work with them, or let either Sabrina or myself or the navigators know. We can try to help. Another question is, when would the first 6 month time period end? Sabrina, do you want to answer that?
Yes. So the first participants enrolled in July. So the first 6 months, if that's the question, will be in January. So that's when the first group of people will have completed the 6 month placebo-controlled trial. But again, we do need to get the results from the group, from the entire group. So the timing of the final results of the entire trial, or each regimen, I should say, depend on the rate of enrollment. Obviously, the sooner we enroll all the other participants, the sooner those new participants can complete their 6 months. And at that point, we can see the results.
So there's a question that says, many ALS patients, including myself, are frustrated by the time it takes to consolidate and review trial results before release, as well as time from submission to FDA for comment. Has or will the platform trial done anything to improve the timing and release of information to the public? So that's a really good point. And maybe I'll point out a few things. So one, for the platform trial, we're all about cutting time and efficiency. And so our plan is to release the top line results, you know, as soon as we have them. You know, from the time when the last person has their last visit, it often is a couple of weeks to do the final collection of data, cleaning, making sure there's no mistakes before you lock it and do the analysis. But often, and we plan to do this, the statisticians have it all coded, so they just push a button when we tell them we're ready. But you have to make sure you're ready, because you can't analyze it and then say, oops, I made a mistake, and reopen your database and change the data. So there is a need to be, again, obsessive and make sure everything's ready. So that does take a couple of weeks, but not more than a couple of weeks after the last person finishes. So we do plan to present the results, you know, right away. And I would say that the other companies have done that too. So Brainstorm, for example, announced the results, you know, right after they had them. Now the next step you ask about is the FDA. And so I want to say the FDA can't even comment on it until a company submits the data. So often it appears like the FDA is slow, but it's not actually them at all. And the companies need to present and ask for a meeting and present the data, and that sometimes takes time. But I'm with you that we want it to be speedy. But I do think the FDA has made a commitment in ALS to meet fast, but they have to be asked, and then they'll do it. So related to that, there's a question about Amylyx, and so maybe Sabrina, since you're the PI of that, is there any anticipated date for the FDA to approve or disapprove AMX 035?
Yeah, so as you just described, it's a multi-step process. So the next steps, I guess, are to submit all the material and to the FDA. I would say that the actual submission is several thousand pages. So, which is also why, you know, it may take a little bit of time to submit all of that, because really, when you submit approval for a new drug, it's a complex submission process where you're looking at anything from toxicology, chemistry, packaging to clinical trial results. So I know the company is doing absolutely everything that's possible to move this as quickly as possible. So I anticipate that the submission will happen, and then, you know, again, it's going to be some time to review it, but I know all the players are working on it.
And then there's a question about whether we're going to get preliminary results in January or February of 2021. And maybe I'll answer that, but because no, we wouldn't. I mean, I wish we could get it that soon. Even with this fast enrollment, we won't have it by then. So the study ends when the last person enrolled for, let's say, these first 3 regimens finishes 6 months. So we're anticipating at our current rate of enrollment that will be done, you know, barring all the changes with the current surge. You know, we would finish enrollment around March. And so then 6 months later would be when the last person finishes their 6 months. In the meantime, the participants who already finished their 6 months, they go into open label extension. But we wouldn't have the results until that last person who enrolled finishes 6 months. But the good news then is that we'll have results for all the regimens. And I think at the rate, the current enrollment, that the 4th regimen will be right behind. So we will know, you know, next fall, the results of all 4 drugs, not 1 drug. And we'll probably have, you know, 2 or 3 other drugs, you know, new drugs in the pipeline. So it really is an efficient way to do it. So there's a question about if there's any studies of trials on KIF5A.
Actually, I'm not aware of any. Do you, Mary?
There aren't yet, but it is an interesting target. It's a genetic change that that people who have a particular form of that gene have a much longer course. So it's a clue to how nature has made a way to have a really, really slow form of this. So there are companies working on that target, but I don't know that anyone's close to a trial yet. It's a really good question. There's a question. I thought you had said in the past that if someone takes Cudkowicz, they could stop it for 30 days and be able to do the trial at that time.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true for Cudkowicz and for all other experimental drugs. So when I was speaking earlier, I was referring to use of Cudkowicz or other experimental drugs while participating in the platform trial. But so sorry if I misspoke, but absolutely you are correct. People can take experimental drugs for a period of time and then stop them, wash out, and then about a month later enroll in the platform trial. Absolutely.
So there's a question of whether we're expecting a more compassionate FDA under President Biden. That's a good question. I don't actually really know yet. I do hope, obviously, the bills that a lot of you and IMALS and others have really put forward to have a kind of a special emphasis FDA on ALS, which could move faster, goes through, because that'll be, no matter who, you know, no matter who's in charge of the government, would really make a huge difference, and hopefully that would be feasible under President Biden too. So there's a question: how many patients are you looking to enroll in each regimen?
160, yes. So they're all the same size, and we're definitely making progress towards that goal. But yes, 160, and those, most of them will be on active, but there's a small group on placebo.
Yeah. So a typical study, if we weren't in the platform, would be 240, 120 on drug, 120 on placebo. But because of the platform trial, we can do the 160 with 120 on drug and 40 on placebo. And then again, we're pulling the placebos. So it's So as you saw, we are enrolled already. We have 160 people already on a regimen with 3 regimens. So we're a third of the way with enrollment for the first 3 drugs, which is again fantastic. I think it would be even faster without a pandemic. It is, and we know it's difficult for all of you and for the sites. But we're determined to keep pushing forward. So this question is, does the 50,000 signature petition help expedite FDA's review and approval?
That's a great question. I honestly don't know. I know that was the petition was delivered to the FDA as was announced publicly. So I think obviously anytime we see that there is interest from the community, I think that that's important. But again, the direct effect, I really don't know. But I do want to say that it's great that we are working as a community, you know, people in academia, in universities, hospitals, foundations, as well as the patient community, because we're all working towards the same goal.
Yeah. You know, I am very hopeful. I mean, I think it shows the power of the patient voice and the community get together. And I think it was a well done study. So you know, hopefully we'll know. But I hear you guys about the process. It's not on, as you guys say, on ALS clock. And there's room to improve. And I like the idea of what can we do at the platform trial level to make sure that when we have the results and they're 1, 2, 3, 4 are positive, that we can, you know, with our pharma partners, move fast for a submission for approval.
Yeah, I mean, a nice feature of the platform is that the regimens are all similar, right? So once the FDA reviews the first, you know, I would imagine that sort of, in a way, the process, obviously every drug is a little bit different and there's some specific, you know, details about each drug. But, you know, again, we basically open with what we think is an optimized trial design with a clearly laid out statistical plan, and all the drugs will be tested similarly. So I would imagine that should help the review process as well.
There's another question about Brainstorm, whether the Brainstorm, have they told the prior participants if they were on drug or placebo? And no, they have not. And this came up on the patient call with Brainstorm. And this is the issue. And we all want to tell the participants what they were on as soon as possible. But they really can't do that until they've had their conversation with the FDA. Because, for example, if the FDA comes back and says, all right, this looks hopeful, but you need to do X, Y, and Z, can you go back to the participants and get that data? If they've already unblinded the study to the participants and to the sites, they can't do that. They can't get that important data. So they want to wait until that FDA meeting. And if the FDA doesn't want to know anything else, then they can tell people. So hopefully it'll be soon. It's a good question. So I don't see any other questions in the box. This was nice. It was nice to have a little more time. We weren't rushed. I don't know, Jen, if you wanted to say any last comments. You're on mute.
You're muted.
You're yeah.
Sorry.
Now you're on.
No,
mute.
just again, just thank you so much for allowing me to be on today and to speak on behalf of ALS1. I think our founder Kevin Gosnell would be pretty happy up there looking down with all his ALS warrior friends who have joined him where he is in heaven. And this was clearly, you know, a form of incredible unity that he often spoke about. And you know, to be not only you know, uniting research, but to be uniting in a different sense, but similarly to be uniting drugs into one trial in a different sense of unity, but it is pretty remarkable. So looking forward to hopefully great things to come for that. And back to that question that we had that someone wrote in about treatments. Hopefully, you know, this spawns some tremendous treatments, and hopefully those treatments do turn into cures. So I think that's the goal for everyone. But I'm just happy to be a part in some small way, and just grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you on Thursday. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.